there. Thanks for joining us. This is the State of Decay 2 stream. I'm your host, Geoffrey Card, and the Homecoming update is almost ready to go live. We're going to give you a tour of the new map today, Trumbull Valley, and I wanted to give you a quick warning in advance, though. We are going to be avoiding spoiling any of the details of the story that you're going to experience in Trumbull Valley, but we are going to be talking about the lore of Trumbull Valley, the background, and the setup of the map. So if you're looking to go into this with absolutely zero spoilers, this is probably not the stream for you, at least until you've spent a little bit of time in Trumbull Valley and explored it a little bit. Because I've brought in 3 of the experts on this map, so we're going to talk about what's in the map, why it's there, why we made the decisions that we made. And so let's just get right into it. First off, I want to introduce our first guest, Andy Collins. He is the narrative lead on our team, and he was the head of the team that put together Update 26. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm good, Geoffrey. Thanks for having me here.
This is a really, really big update, and you have had to sit on this and not talk about it for like a year as you've been working on it. How does it feel to actually get this thing finally in the wild in front of players?
It's an immense relief. I think that part probably goes without saying. An awful lot of people have been working really, really hard on the Homecoming update and all the parts of it for many of them over a year. And speaking for all of them, we're immensely grateful that it's finally getting in front of players here in the next few days. So super excited.
And one of those people who we definitely want to make sure you're all aware of, that is Doug Juno. He was our primary world builder on this map, leading a team of other artists who have all been, spending, like Andy said, most of the last year working on this map. How are you doing, Doug?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so it's really great to have him here. And we've also got our art director, Brant Fitzgerald, who himself has done a lot of work on this map, especially around the bases. Good to have you here, Brant.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Geoffrey.
Yeah, Brant, of course, is one of the longest standing members of the State of Decay team, going all the way back to the very beginnings of the first game. And I think one of the best reasons to have him here is because he can give us a lot of insights into the original map and what it was like and what we were doing there before we revised it twice. So with these folks in tow, I'm ready to get started. Oh, one thing that I forgot to do, though, was cheat the time of day so that we can actually look at this stuff in daylight. So let me just do that real quick. I am playing in a version of the game that this is sort of the pre-release version of the game. That's the version of it that we're ready to go live with in just a couple of days. I'm playing it on a dev kit so that I can, freely cheat and stuff if I need to. We're not going to be here mostly to fight zombies. We're going to be here to just explore the map. So I'm playing on the green zone. I've got a bunch of extra equipment, including a grenade launcher, just in case I need it. So we're not going to be challenging ourselves when it comes to combat. We are mostly here just to see this game. So I've decided to start us out here at Pterodactyl. Wait, how do you pronounce this? It's Pterodactyl Park, right, Andy?
It's actually pronounced Pterodactyl Tark.
Oh, Pterodactyl Tark. Okay, sorry, excuse me. Yeah, so this base, this is actually my base currently in this community, and as you can see, it is. You're right. It is Pterodactyl Tark. Clearly, that's how that's supposed to be pronounced. The P is silent, I believe, is a joke. So, one of the most familiar things that we've got here, though, is this pterodactyl. So Brant and I, if you have been watching the State of Decay streams for the past several years, one of our go-to events was we would head up to Jurassic Junction in the original map, in the original State of Decay. Brant would always shoot down this fiberglass pterodactyl, put it in the back of a pickup truck, and try to get it all the way down to Spencer's Mill. Sometimes he failed, sometimes he succeeded, but now he has finally scored his final victory, his ultimate victory with his pterodactyl. It is now here for the rest of time. How are you feeling about that, Brant?
Well, I'm super excited that I was able to make it there, and it will never move. It is not a movable object. It is there forever. So all the doubters, all the haters, look what happens.
So we're gonna start out. Our little tour here in Spencer's Mill, which is, this is the town where the original State of Decay first really got going. This is where you settled your first proper base. And actually, why don't we head up there first to sort of to have a look at where it has ended up. I'm gonna sort of make my way through this puddle, up these stairs. Oh, I love the way our vehicles are tuned so we can do stuff like that. I never really took the road to the Church of the Ascension back when I lived there in the original State of Decay. I always just sort of made a beeline for it through the wilderness, and the new map is no exception. There's no reason not to do that.
You're an environmental monster.
I really am. I'm just leaving tire tracks everywhere in the world. So, as you can see... Oh, we got some zombies following me here. You can go away. All right. So, as you can see, even yet more time has passed with these sites compared to the difference between the original State of Decay and Heartland. I'm curious. So, Doug, you had to basically revisit each of these sites, especially the major landmarks that players were going to remember, and and not just sort of make them look older, but have them sort of tell a story about what has happened since the last time the players been to this map. And it's like you had to touch so many different places in order to get this to work.
Yeah, initially we had a list of way more things than we were actually able to touch, just because we were excited about what we could do telling the stories beyond Heartland. But yeah, a lot of these, like the church, it was able to get another pass on it, new set dressing inside that continues the story, and outside the church as well. It all plays into the narrative stuff that Andy's been working on.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was fun going back to it and not just, making it all work as a core map.
Yeah, so when you come to this church initially, early on in the game, nobody's living here. It's all abandoned, and you can't claim it as a base yet. For what and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. The fact that we basically went for an entirely new set of bases with this iteration of the map. But there's a lot of
with one exception.
With one exception. Oh, yeah, that's right. There is one exception, one very key exception that we'll get to a little bit later in the stream. But yeah, so I think that one thing that we did try to do, though, I think Andy could probably speak to this a little bit, is we really we planned out a bunch of story content for this map that can't be seen at any other map, where most of the maps, the way that you experience missions is our missions are designed so that they can work anywhere, so that we can have the same set of missions that work on every single map, no matter where you are, no matter where you're settled, no matter what's going on. Our missions can work almost anywhere. But we had a different approach in Trumbull Valley, where we've actually got specific missions that are going to take you back to these memorable landmarks and sort of give you a chance to experience something here that you can't experience anywhere else. That was a really new thing for us that probably took a lot of extra effort. Would you say?
Yeah, indeed. As soon as we decided to shift our focus on Trumbull Valley from just to do a map, as if that's a small task, to also instill it with a greater amount of narrative content, we realized that we had an opportunity to tell some unique stories. Trumbull, unlike our other maps, has a lot of history behind it. Players have been here for many, many hours. We have lots of characters and stories that have happened here. So we felt that the only appropriate answer was to have our new narrative content be unique and play off of those characters, those stories, and those places. So it was a unique opportunity for us to tell some more specialized stories than State of Decay has traditionally told, at least State of Decay 2.
So yeah, it does feel a lot like sort of a return to form. Like the original State of Decay 1 had a lot of stories. It had some randomly generated missions that could happen anywhere, but it also had a set of missions that were sort of the story missions that would really take advantage of specific locations on the map, specific characters, and we're kind of going back to that model of storytelling when you play on this map.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable comparison. Folks who've played Heartland will remember that version of Trumbull Valley has a very, very specific storyline that you play through to essentially to the exclusion of all else. This is more of a hybrid approach between what State of Decay does and what Heartland did, or what the original State of Decay did, where you're still going to see random survivors pop up with their needs. You might see many familiar missions and storylines from the core game, but those are going to be interspersed with stories that you'll not see on any other map. Those are the ones that really tap into what makes Trumbull unique.
So one of the things that players are going to notice, particularly players who played State of Decay Heartland, is the fact that, in Heartland, one of the biggest differences between the Trumbull Valley you experienced in that DLC versus the Trumbull Valley you experienced in the original State of Decay was that there was this plague gunk that had just infested so many sites on the map, especially in downtown Marshall, which it had basically completely demolished practically that part of the town. And places here, like the Fork in the Road Diner, were just completely overrun with this gunk. And now it's turned into husks. You can see that some time has passed. Something has happened here. I'm really curious, actually, about sort of the work that went into transforming every chunk of plague gunk all over this map into something new. Doug, like what kind of effort went into all of this?
I mean, originally, I don't know if we might have just been leaving the plague stuff in there as the red, like it was in Heartland, but it just felt weird. It didn't feel like time had passed and all the plague zombies had been gone. Because that's all Heartland was mostly plagues, or all plague zombies, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was completely dominated by the plague. That was part of the.
Yeah, we wanted it to feel like the plague had been kind of taken care of, not taken care of, but kind of, sort of taken care of to the extent it was in Heartland, and then some time had passed also, and then so we wanted to figure out what dead plague walls and husks had looked like, and we basically figured they had died after all the plague hearts had been killed, and then they're just kind of extra fertile, and they could grow these plants on them. It gives it a whole new look that's different from Heartland, and it just makes it look like they are definitely not active anymore.
Yeah, I love the sort of the colors and things that you chose here, because it's not just greenery taking it over. It's actually these colorful plants, and sort of heather-looking plants and these yellow flowers. Like, you really sort of made it feel like it's more than just, it's overgrown, like many apocalyptic maps overgrown. It feels particularly sort of fecund, like there's something special going on here. And there's actually, there are stories that kind of go into the details about this that you'll experience, that we're not going to spoil them too much, but there are characters you can follow, their missions, that sort of give you a little bit more insight into what's been going on with these plague infestations, since the story of Heartland was completed. So I'm going to hop in my car here and start heading north a little ways, because one of the major plague infestations that we had in Heartland was actually there to serve a very specific purpose. So you might be aware, just if you sort of time out the updates that we've made to the game, you can probably figure out that we actually spent significantly longer building the new TRUMBULL Valley core map than we even spent on the Heartland map. And one of the shortcuts that we needed to take with Heartland was right over here with this tunnel. This tunnel, one of the most sort of iconic screenshots that we use to promote State of Decay Heartland, was this tunnel being completely blocked off by plague. And so there was a reason for that, wasn't there, Doug?
Yeah, I mean, when Heartland was being worked on, to finish it on the time it was supposed to be finished, basically needed to cut off big chunks of the map in order to just focus the whole story down on the lower part of the map.
Yeah, so if you look at the map in Heartland, there's sort of a cutoff point right here where this entire sort of northern peninsula of the map is just gone. And similarly, this river is a cutoff point in State of Decay Heartland. And now this whole section here called Fairfield has been added back in.
And Doug makes a really good point about how that helped us in Heartland keep the story more focused, right? Those two areas were very crucial in the original State of Decay. They were literally the beginning and end of the story. But in neither of them were you expected to spend very much time. You had an experience and then left, and then you go over to Fairfield at the end and do something and leave again. So they didn't help much. They didn't contribute much to that Heartland experience. So cutting them also really let the player of that game focus much more on that core valley area, that sort of farmland loop.
So let's head through this tunnel and have a look at the new version of the Mount Tanner area. So this is a part of the game, part of the map, that was excluded from Heartland deliberately, again, because like Andy said, this was a part of the map that was originally created just to tell one small part of the original State of Decay story. And honestly, it didn't have that much development. There weren't that many sites here. There wasn't much exploring or scavenging that you could do. And actually, this was an area that when Brant and I, used to stream the original State of Decay, we would come up here a lot, partly just because there were huge swaths of the map here that most players would never ever look at, but that had, the artist had spent a long time building it, and we kind of liked showing it off because that work was really, really good, and we felt like a lot of players just missed out on it. And so we've actually done a lot of work this time around trying to flesh this area out and give players a lot more reason to come here. Like this area here, like Brant, this was the lumber mill that gave Spencer's Mill its name, wasn't it?
This actually was the top of the log flume area up here.
So log flume back there.
Yeah. And then the mill itself is a little farther downhill, but yeah, it was just a field of stumps. And I love what Doug and his crew did to flesh this area out. This was always sort of the hope that the entirety of our maps would be interesting and useful and have things for players to discover and missions to accomplish. So
Better make sure it's dead.
this is sort of the vision and hope that we had for Mount Tanner realized by Doug and his team.
And yeah, it was probably a really interesting sort of conundrum that you guys ran into as you were first starting to plan out this map, because there are a lot of players who played the original State of Decay who are very, very familiar with a lot of these spaces. And when they come back up to Mount Tanner, they're not going to find exactly the same space that they left. It's not just that the map has aged, but there are places up here in Mount Tanner that were not there in the original map. And so I'm curious what the sort of I bet the audience is probably curious what the thinking was behind the decision to flesh this area out and add more sites, add more locations that weren't here in the original iteration.
Yeah, for a while when we were working on the early stages of bringing Heartland to be a core State of Decay 2 map, we were definitely going to add Fairfield the whole time because there's a lot of sites there and it's pretty dense and it makes sense to add that. But we were kind of hesitant to add Mount Tanner at first because there's not a lot of sites and things like we have added, and it still takes a lot of work to flesh out that entire area. We want it to be worthwhile for players to come up here and worthwhile for us to put in the effort on all that stuff. So the challenge was to try to keep the sites that were there and keep them true to the original game, but also add new things that didn't really distract and make it feel like a completely different area, but also add more just things to explore and more interest to the empty areas of the map. And so when we decided to do that, we figured we were going to add Mount Tanner for sure, and then it became a larger part of the narrative beat.
Yeah, I think anyone who's been to one of these state park type locations, it's not just a road leading out to a campground. A lot of times you can see that there's people who live in these areas, houses along the side of the road, even like small representatives of industry in places like this. And so I love that you didn't just sort of like add a bunch of random stuff. You took sort of the theme of this area and like what it's trying to represent, the feelings and the memories it's meant to evoke, and just leaned really harder into the same thing. So this feels like not like it's a different area, but rather like it's just a sort of a more true representation of exactly the kind of place that Mount Tanner was always meant to be. And now look what you can do. You can cross this bridge in this direction. You can bring a car up here. Like players who have been playing in the beta have called this out as one of their favorite things. In the original State of Decay, you didn't have a car at first, and you were not able to leave this area until you'd been through the initial tutorial. But that meant this area was cut off from a lot of players who wanted to explore it because you don't want to go anywhere without your car. And because that bridge was out, players couldn't bring their cars up here. But now you can drive through all of these campgrounds. You can drive all the way up to the ranger station and see these old places without needing to just do the entire thing on foot, which is like a really nice breath of fresh air.
Yeah, that was the other thing, that the original game had the linear kind of progression from the very tip of the map back down toward Spencer's Mill, and without having that sort of progression in a core State of Decay 2 map, it didn't really make sense to keep it as bare bones as it was before.
So there's all these like really memorable areas. Like I believe this might be where we first met Maya down here, though there was this is not the Maya area.
No, this is where we were introduced to Marcus and Ed.
That's right.
They walked out of the woods right on the road down where you're headed.
Okay, that's right. Maya was a little bit further over, like that direction, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was to the. If you're looking at the bridge from this side, it would be to the left of the bridge, down in the river.
This is why we have Brant here, because he's always going to remember this map way better than I am.
I will say that coming back and working on this map, I never once felt like I didn't know where I was because I spent so much time driving around this map for so many years. I didn't have to ask Doug where something was.
Yeah, it's a little different from, say, you know, Providence Ridge, which was completely brand new from scratch. This is definitely, you know, it's sort of a, yeah, sort of a nostalgia trip for those of us who worked on the original State of Decay.
So the only warning that I didn't put on that bridge is slow. Oh no, maybe there is a slow sign on there. Because you can get your car messed up if you're going really fast on that jump because it's very severe.
Yeah, this
Very exciting.
Go ahead.
It's very exciting. Do it. Do it. Jump it.
I did not bring my fastest car, but you don't have to. That jump, like, it looks like a normal bridge, but that jump is actually really sudden and really steep, and it will make you fly. I've already done it here, and so it doesn't fire off, but the very first time you make that jump, your character also reacts to the wonder of it, which is kind of fun. It's actually a new feature that we've added to this iteration of the map. And, you know, Andy might be able to speak to this a little better than I could, that we've added these things called discoveries, which actually it's a single word that kind of covers a wide variety of different experiences players can have.
One of the aspects of State of Decay that I've always loved is the environmental storytelling that Doug and other world builders have historically added to our maps. I'm thinking about places like survivor campsites on top of buildings and graffiti scrawled on various places. The things that tell you there's a story that happened here, and I wonder what it was. Those are fascinating little anecdotes. Historically, the problem was that we didn't have the tools to allow your characters to react and interact with those scenes. With the new Trumbull Valley map, we've started building some tools that allow us to create those interactions. Some of them are about entering an area, like the one that Geoffrey's talking about there. Jump the bridge, get your car high enough, and your character will react to that. Others are sites that you see or objects that you can interact with, that the character gets to acknowledge their existence. It's a small step toward a greater immersion in the world that reminds the player, oh yeah, my avatar that is moving through the world recognizes what they're seeing and reacting to. So it was a great amount of fun to find existing places on the map to add those, and also to work with Doug's team to add a few more and let them push their creativity. I'm not going to spoil any of them right now, but this is one of those places where players that enjoy exploring maps for little hidden details, this is the kind of map that I think you'll really enjoy.
I wonder if that's...
Yeah, I think it was fun working with the narrative team just to get more. A lot of the time when we do these environmental storytelling things, we just kind of would come up with it on the spot, but just planning a few of them out was a lot more fun too, just to kind of get more eyes on it and make the areas a little bit more unique.
And speaking of environmental storytelling, this is maybe the largest example in Trumbull Valley or any other map we've done. Players from the original game and Heartland will certainly remember this crashed plane here.
Yeah, originally, you know, this plane, there was a lot of environmental storytelling going around with it. Like there was, you know, we had, you know, Easter eggs, some of them devoted to, you know, early fans of the game from before it was even released. Like, for instance, speaking of things being released, it looks like we got this Dantron box, which is actually one of our longest standing Easter eggs in the game. Brant could probably tell the story of that a little better than I could.
Yeah, but that's a stream in itself.
Okay, cool. Well, suffice it to say, you know, we had a very sort of active community even prior to the release of State of Decay 1, and this was an Easter egg that tied into that. And actually, you know, if you search this item, you can actually get a unique thing that you can only be found in this particular spot. This, you know, there are lots of things throughout the map, so I'm only going to spoil the one of them. But I just picked up this this pilot hat that if I can stick this on my character. Let's find it down here. I think it was called pilot hat. There it is, pilot hat. Yeah, so there's an airline pilot hat now that my character can wear because she's come here and found this discovery. And she when she picks it up, she comments on it. She gives a little, a little bit of flavor about the world. And that's just a tool. It used to be that we've always had environmental storytelling and Easter eggs going on in places like this plane crash. But now we can lean even harder into them and sort of give players like sort of even more story content to sort of to chew on when they take the time to really explore and discover stuff like this.
Yeah, this was always such an important spot, just because visually it was a place that you could always reference to know where you were in the map. Of course, it was on fire forever. We put the fire out.
Then we covered it in plague gunk, and now
That's
we've killed the plague gunk and it's overgrown. Like this plane, it looks different in every version of the map, but each stage of this plane's development says something about what's been going on in the world of Trumbull Valley.
Yeah, it was always a very important visual bellwether, sort of, to get a really good idea of what's been going on. So,
one of the fun aspects of those discovery commentary bits that the characters make is that because we have 14 different character voices in our game, we got to write different reactions from different voices for those discoveries. So depending on which character you're playing when you interact with those discoveries, you may hear different comments. I look forward to folks sharing and collecting all of them online someplace so they can piece together perhaps even more of the story than any one person can get on their own.
So we are here at the plane crash in the Farmlands, but there's a lot more to the Farmlands than just this one, probably its most memorable landmark. I'm going to head a little bit to the east here and check out one of the largest and probably already most popular bases in this part of the map. And that is the Farmland compound. Now, for me, in the original State of Decay, I think the Farmland was the farmhouse, which is I think what we called it back then, was probably my favorite base, mostly just because it was so centrally located. It was really easy to reach all of these areas on the map. It did have one slight problem though, which is the fact that it was a fairly small base. It was kind of like it was very similar to the Kirkman and Savini residences in that it mostly just contained this single house. But the Farmland compound, and we're going to get into a lot more detail about the strategy of these bases and how they fit together when we do a later stream with Joe and Lucy and Brant. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that people at this base have gotten tired of being right next to a barn that was always infested with zombies, and so they've taken over the barn. So this base has actually now become one of the largest bases in the game, with room for tons of large slots. And it's kind of this location was not only prominent in the original game, it was also prominent in Heartland. This is where you would meet Ray Santos, and now it's one of the biggest bases, probably one of the best end game bases that we have.
To me, this Farmland base represents sort of a really iconic concept of the zombie survival genre, right? Is you find a somewhat remote and defensible location, you wall it off, and you just turn it into the ultimate in self-sufficiency, right? My current community is in this base, and I'm running, thanks to this base and the outposts I've got, I'm running at a significant profit income in all 5 resources.
Wow.
And parts. Like I feel like I could literally live in that base forever, thanks to the space it offers and the ease of access it has in all directions. I love it.
So this base is not the only large base that we've ever had in the Farmlands. I'm actually going to head vaguely in the direction of the other one, the base from State of Decay Heartland. We're not going to go inside because we do want to avoid issuing too many extravagant spoilers about the story of this world. But this does give me a chance to kind of explore the landscape of the Farmlands. The Farmlands have always been sort of the flattest, most open area, some of the places with the biggest skies and the biggest sense of a huge open world. And that has not changed. In fact, there's a lot of reward to sort of exploring this area. And I think that one of the things that's been great about the amount of time we spent on this area is the fact that even our most open, widest, flattest areas that could easily have gone with less detail, like Doug and his team were able to put a ton of environmental storytelling and more detail and more interest even into sort of these flatter areas like the swamp and the farmlands. I'm not going to go into detail about what this spot is, though. I think players should look forward to what might go on in this area. Doug, is it tough to take a place like big, wide, flat farmlands and make them visually interesting just because in the real world they're not always the most exciting thing to look at?
Yeah, I mean, all the areas have their own challenges, and sometimes it's fun just to try to get it to look like, I mean, there's still rolling hills and there's enough up and down that you could kind of add some rock outcroppings and things in there, and then that gives some areas to explore and stuff like that. So they offer their own challenge, but it's usually a fun challenge to try to figure that out.
So I'm not going to go inside Jurassic Junction. So this is definitely an area that players remember the original. The base they used to have in State of Decay Heartland was right here. It is not a base in Trumbull when you play the Trumbull Valley core map for reasons that you can discover on your own. But that was the spot right there where that pterodactyl used to be, and Brant would always shoot the pterodactyl down right here and then take it all the way back to the trailer park where it lives now. So you can take that journey again and sort of see how far that is on your own time. But for right,
it's always tough to go back to someplace that you lived before. See how people have changed it.
Yeah, totally. So for now, though, I think we're gonna head down to Marshall. So the next destination that we're gonna look at is downtown Marshall. Downtown Marshall was actually a particular challenge when we were building the Heartland map, and I'm wondering if Doug wants to sort of rehash a little bit of sort of the challenges we had there, because when we went from State of Decay 1 to State of Decay 2, the visual fidelity of our world went up quite a bit, and there were things that we could build in State of Decay 1 that presented new challenges for us in State of Decay 2. Then they forced us to make some changes.
Yeah, and the density, if you played Heartland or State of Decay 1 in Marshall, is a lot more dense than the other 4 core maps in State of Decay 2. So it's just a lot of things to build and flesh out, and it's just it was especially for the timeline that we had for Heartland, to try to make that whole thing explorable. And so I think early on, I don't know if it was early on, I actually wasn't here for that part at the studio, but I know there was the choice to plague wall off a lot of those areas just to make it inaccessible. And then I think through that, kind of organically got the idea of the gauntlet and bringing down the plague walls and things like that.
Yeah, because I think it was not just like a question of sort of the time and person power resources. It was also a question of like system resources, like each explorable building with an interior, which we kind of make a commitment in this game that we try to make every interior that we can fully explorable by the player, and that can add a ton of just detail that then your machine has to be able to handle. And so it's kind of funny to me that like one of the major choices we made just about the story and the progression and the challenges of State of Decay Heartland were driven by the fact that we just had this dense downtown area that was just it was going to be a real challenge for us to make it work on just a system resource level. And so we wiped it out, filled it with plague gunk, so you didn't have a lot of explorable interiors, and that led to the gauntlet and all of the sort of the end game content that was there in Heartland.
Sometimes great art is created by unusual technological and technical circumstances. Ask Steven Spielberg sometime about why Jaws is as good as it is.
Exactly. So I'm not going to explore this right now, but you'll notice like this is another example of the discoveries that Andy was talking about earlier. That there's these places that are marked with these magnifying glasses. That mean this is not just a neat little visual feature. This little piggy tow truck. You can actually interact with that, and your characters will comment and give you a little bit more insight into what is going on in this world. I should also point out right here that we've got another one of our major bases. This is sort of the Marshall military base. This is sort of where, actually, does somebody besides me want to say something about what this what like the story behind this base is as it relates to Heartland and sort of the story we're telling in this map?
Well, I mean, it's the logical progression of what was going on in Marshall. The military had moved in and done what it could against the plague walls, but that didn't. After the resolution of Heartland, that didn't mean the military was done there, and so they created a forward operating base that would sustain their ongoing operations in and around Marshall, and this is the result of that.
Yeah, so we've always had this sort of this high school with the big sports field, which is really sort of evocative of the culture of the rural United States, where small towns, high school sports teams are like a huge part of the identity of a place, and now that sports field has become this military base that. Where you can go and settle and sort of see, multiple layers of the story of this world. Over here, we've got the singed high school, which was another thing that was, perpetually on fire in the original State of Decay.
Yes, and to answer any questions, no, you still cannot get into the high school.
Yeah. And then
we'll never have you running around in a grade or high school in the State of Decay.
So over here we've got this fortified fire station, which is not a base, but it is a really memorable part of Heartland, because this is where you started the Gauntlet. I'm not going to go inside. There are missions in this game that will sort of explore the history of the Gauntlet and sort of give you a tour of what this place has become over time. But you can see we really wanted to recognize that there are these places in our world that players have a lot of past associations with, whether it's the Gauntlet from Heartland, the Courthouse here, which was one of the major NPC groups that existed in the original State of Decay was based here. And so while the interior of the Courthouse is not explorable, you can see it was a hotbed of plague activity during Heartland, and now you can see it's also been sort of turned into a little bit of a military outpost. And this is another spot where each of these locations, we tried to have some of our mission content sort of touch base with each of these locations and make sure that players got a chance to really sort of see highlighted some of these places they have positive memories of. I spent a lot of time at the Savini residence over here, which was a base in the original State of Decay. And of course,
it was a really interesting challenge from a narrative standpoint. How do we balance the love that we and our players have for the prior stories on this map with the needs of the players who will be new and don't know those stories? So we tried to strike that balance, right? Find opportunities to bring players to familiar locations that might have some resonance if they're old veteran players of our game. And even if they're not, they're still very visually interesting and narratively compelling for you to visit these various places. So hopefully we struck that right balance.
Yeah, one of the questions I get a lot from players, honestly, is players who played the original State of Decay 1, a lot of them considered Snyder's here to be the OP base in State of Decay 1. It was a place that a lot of them sort of finished their game. This is where they had settled, and they were like, why can't I settle in Snyder's again? It's such a familiar place. And a big part of that was, we needed to make a decision about, were we just going to go back and sort of lean entirely into nostalgia and let players sort of go back to places that were familiar, like we did with the Farmland compound? Or were we going to focus more of our energy on creating experiences that were not only exciting for, and unfamiliar and cool for new players, but also were unfamiliar and cool to our old veterans? People who, they've lived in Snyder's before, but they haven't lived in, interesting places like the Tranquility Factory, which is where I want to head next. But yeah, that was kind of a, an interesting decision that we needed to make, that, how much were we going to devote to, nostalgia, leaning into, letting players visit places they'd seen before and have new experiences there, and how much did we want to sort of surprise players and let them discover new things that they'd never seen before?
And that also goes for the developers as well, right? We're human beings. We like dabbling in the new and creating things that we haven't seen or
Time
done
to reload.
before. So it was much more rewarding as developers to be able to explore new areas and create new things, experiment with our base locations and some of our base technologies in ways that we had not done in previous versions of the game.
Yeah, I think that kind of came up early on when we decided not to use Jurassic Junction as a base. I think we'd even early on talked about using Jurassic Junction, but having like a nerfed version of it, and it just kind of seemed lame. So early on, we're like 6 new bases. So
Exactly. So this is one of them. This is the Tranquility Factory. This is probably one of the more novel places we put in the game. One thing that I am highlighting right now, because it's gotten dark, is the fact that, you know, we haven't just been adding new map content and new story content to the game. We've also added some new features like leaving your headlights on in your car when you get out. But real quick, we don't really want to always see the base with such harsh lighting as you get from a set of headlights. So let me really quick change up the time of day again to make it 9 o'clock in the morning.
Hey, stranger.
Boom!
We'd
Look
like
at
to
that.
make
Isn't
an
that
offer.
beautiful?
Want to meet up? I sure like being on the winning team.
Of course, it's still lit up by the harsh light of the car.
Yeah, that's true. Let me quickly turn that car around.
Or just turn off the lights, you know.
Oh, whatever. I don't actually. One thing is, I think you actually now. Yeah, no, never mind. You're right. I could have turned off the lights, but I forgot that I could. I just thought I had to turn the car around. Okay, let's head inside here real quick and just have a look. This is actually one of my favorite brand new bases that we've done. This factory was here in Heartland. I believe that this is. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is where you met Diana in the original Heartland version of this map. But a lot has changed since then. And deal with this zombie. So it feels like, you know, originally this was a very harsh industrial building, but somebody has put a lot of effort into making it beautiful. And I think that somebody may have been Brant Fitzgerald. Is that right?
So many of our bases are harsh reminders of the realities of survival. They're about walls and fences and things like that. I love the fact that Brant was able to just have fun and create a space that felt completely unique for our world.
That's exactly it, Andy. It was time. It was time to have something that wasn't just this hard scrabble or militaristic, you know, because other people will survive and other people will have ideas about how they want to live and what they want to live around. And this one just worked out. And it started the crazy pain. We can get into this during the base stream, but yeah, I really like this base. It was a lot of fun to work on.
Yeah, and I love the fact that, you know, there were a smattering, like we pointed out the pterodactyl. There were a smattering of like little physics toys in the original State of Decay that, you know, State of Decay 2 didn't lean quite as hard into, but we do have these yoga balls. So if anybody wants to see how far they can get one of these yoga balls, I would love to see what they're capable of doing in, you know, if they want to make videos of their own. So, by the way, I should apologize to folks in the chat who have been funneling us questions. We have got so much content to go through. I keep not finding opportunities to answer those questions. Let me check with our moderators if they wouldn't mind if maybe after we've gotten through the main content of this stream, we spent just a little bit of extra time going through some of these questions and answering them rather than just sort of dropping them off. Because I know players are, you know, they've got a lot of really interesting questions that they... you know, they'd really like to see answers to it. I would hate it if, you know, if we didn't answer any of them because we just have so much to show, you know, from our actual written down agenda that we've got. All right, so let's head up towards Fairfield. So
Let's see.
Okay.
Dennis Okiba asks about what about the new bounty pack, and I think we're going to plan on talking about that on an upcoming stream.
Yeah, we're going to get into a lot of detail about that this coming Wednesday, on release day, basically. When the bounty pack goes live, that's when we're going to talk about it. So yeah, we'll go into a lot of detail. We'll get Dan and Mark in here. So one of my most memorable places in the original State of Decay map was this intersection right here, because I spent so much time traveling from Marshall to Spencer's Mill to Fairfield, and no matter where I went and what I did, this intersection was always on the route. And so this is where we've placed the starter base of Trumbull Valley right here. Is right at this intersection where you can reach all 3 of the major population centers with almost kind of the same distance. You know, you can get to the Fork in the Road Diner, you can get to Snyder's, and you can get up here to Fairfield, all, you know, with about the same travel time from this spot. So you can sort of figure out where you want to be if you're new to the map from your very first starter base. But this is a really good jumping off point, I think, for us to go and explore Fairfield, which is one of it's one of the 2 parts of this map that were basically that were not a part of Heartland, but were part of the original State of Decay 1, and that we've restored now for the first time in State of Decay 2, including this repaired bridge. So in Heartland, these bridges were destroyed partly as a way to explain why players could not get to Fairfield, but now someone has gone through and repaired these bridges, and one of the things I like about what the world builders have done in this area is that they didn't just go with some easy solution where, you know, oh yeah, we just created one piece of art that, you know, is sort of a replacement bridge and we're going to stick in both places. You know, there was sort of a professional replacement job done by the military on that bridge we just drove across, but each of the bridges has actually kind of got its own special treatment, which I really like.
Yeah, technically speaking, only one of the 2 bridges has actually been repaired.
Yes, that's true.
Because Geoffrey is going to discover here, this off just to his right there that he's passed by, that's a brand new bridge.
Yeah, that's right.
That has never existed before on Trumbull Valley, but it demonstrates the can-do attitude of the survivors who just left here, who just built this out of whatever they could find, because here's a low spot in the river. We're going to build a new bridge there that we can drive across. So totally changes the flow of this area of the map.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if you've really gotten sort of accustomed to the 2 access points that you had to Fairfield, now you have to sort of rethink your knowledge of this geography, because the other bridge, which I really, one of my favorite spots in Fairfield is actually right over here. That's why I was passing by that first bridge, was because I love looking at the other destroyed bridge from down here, which was not possible, I believe, in Heartland. But it just, I don't know, this towering ruin. This is probably one of the more dramatic ruins that we have in our apocalypse story here, and it's just looking at this towering over me like this, I don't know, it just gives me this sense of awe that I really like. And this whole area here, this is actually one of the areas that was most heavily revised by Doug and his team. There originally was not very much going on in this space, and there was just a lot of room to sort of add details and improvements. So like if you are still really familiar with the Fairfield area, this part of the map is probably one of the ones that is going to feel the most new and unique.
Yeah, one of the reasons in the original game, all these cliff sides were they just kind of acted as a blocker, and you had to either go around by the large bridge or straight across where you're going on the newly restored bridge. And it worked for the first game, but for where we were at now, going up through, you know, to Fairfield, it felt weird just having this big blocker that you had to drive around to get to any of the new areas. And it felt like if you're going down toward Marshall, you could go through the farmlands and there's not really anything stopping you. And so we kind of experimented early on, adding some new paths in between the rocks and just dirt roads and some cabins and things. And it just felt like it was a decent fit, and it didn't feel too different from the original game. So similar to what we did up in Mount Tanner.
Yeah, it's like it feels like in spirit it is really doing the exact same thing that the original map was trying to do. It's just doing more of it, you know, with more detail, more nooks and crannies to discover, and so there's a lot of exploration value you can get out of that. And similarly up here, you know, this used to be a fairly, this area was very evocative of sort of the suburban wasteland feel that you can sometimes get in small towns where there was this place that I loved to scavenge in the original State of Decay, because it was this really nice convenient strip mall that ended up being sort of part of the inspiration for many of the strip malls that we have throughout the maps in State of Decay 2. But you know, we've now put a lot more work into sort of telling a story with this place. Sometime after State of Decay 1, something happened here that made this place a lot more intricate and detailed and sort of full of storytelling. And I'm imagining maybe we don't want to try to go into all of those details.
Yeah, I'll just touch on it a little bit. The sort of the inspiration for this. The question came up. So the end of State of Decay 1, you break down the wall and you escape the valley. But what happens for all the people that are outside the valley that think that inside is a better idea than outside? So our supposition was that, well, people are going to come in thinking the valley is safer. Where are they all going to settle? Where are they all going to live? So we created the idea of, hey, what if all other people ended up right here near the entrance, and sort of built a large area where a lot of people could live. And that became our oasis. We worked with Kevin Pun, one of our other world builders, to create some gorgeous, more gorgeous than that bloater cloud, some gorgeous concept art that the rest of our team then worked to bring into life. The banners and signage and the tents, drastically changing the feel of that place without losing its core original identity. You can see what it used to be, but you can also see what these industrious folks, how they repurposed it.
Yeah, what they've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, we wanted to make it feel more unique too. Like, we didn't want it to feel like, oh, you can play this in Drucker. We wanted to have tie more into the story too. Where
are we going up here, Geoffrey, or are we going to just hint?
Oh. Well, yeah. So we can just hint about this area here. So one of the places that some more work did go into was also the dam. Folks who remember the original State of Decay would remember that there were major story points that took place all the way up here in the dam, and we've actually made sure that there are good reasons for players to take this side trip. Our landmark outpost, which is sort of a unique outpost that offers things that no other outpost does, is up here in this part of the map. And this is another area where, the story has definitely been advanced a lot further than it was in the original State of Decay and in Heartland. And so there's a lot to discover up this way. But yeah, no, Brant's anxiety about giving away too much is probably well founded. So we'll let players discover this area on their own.
And that is another area that is a lot different than it was. Not a lot different. It hits all the beats of the original game, but we also added additional things like the outpost, and also just making this map functional the same way the other core maps are. We had to add some buildings into Heartland that weren't there, and so we had to find places for those buildings, and some of them like big factories. One of them's up by the dam. I don't think that's too spoilery.
Yeah, no, that's true.
But another reason it's way up there too is just the way our memory works. I had to place it way far away from Marshall, and you're over memory, and so some choices they're kind of a necessity to get the map functional and running.
Yeah, so that factory that plays a huge part in sort of the late game of our legacy arcs. It used to be around here somewhere near a lot of the other buildings, but yeah, Doug moved it up here.
It was a lot closer to that military base, the bridge base.
Oh, that's right.
And it was just adding 5 or 6 megabytes in there. It was way over, so.
Yeah, so like as Andy was pointing out earlier, it's kind of fun how a lot of the inspiration for some of our best artistic choices often come from the constraints that are on us, not just the open-ended opportunities. Because I think that area with that factory actually looks really cool now. It's a really great place to stick it. I mean, when you're getting to the end of the game, going up to a place like that is really sort of a dramatic part of the landscape feels really good, and we probably wouldn't have gotten there if it weren't for those constraints.
It's clear for now. But
so
no
we're
place
definitely
can
not going to
secure
go into
with a
too much
blade
detail
hard
about
nearby.
this location, but I just wanted to point it out because the Ferris wheel has always been a really sort of remarkable, memorable part of this map. And now we've actually, rather than having a base over at the big, wide open sort of rodeo area, which is where we had it in the original State of Decay, we've centered one of our the main base that's here in the Fairfield area. Is specifically over here by one of the most memorable landmarks in the Fairfield area, which is this Ferris wheel. So players are definitely encouraged to check out what's over here. There's a lot of really interesting stuff.
Yeah, that one was super important for me. I wanted to make sure that we included the Ferris wheel in a more interesting way this time. Swampy Swamp on Twitch asks, is there a lot of Easter eggs in the map? And I mean, my answer to that is the map is mostly Easter eggs at this point.
Oh, I can't go through there. Yeah, so this is the original rodeo base over here, which which is no longer a base, just like most of the places, with the exception of the Farmland compound. Most of the original bases of State of Decay 1 are not bases, but there was still a lot of work that went into developing these locations as memorable, interesting locations to explore. So that if you are one of those players who's got a lot of nostalgia for the time you spent in a lot of these bases, there's still plenty of stuff for you to go there and explore to remind yourself of a lot of those fun memories. But at the same time, Doug and his team put a lot of effort into creating new areas. Like there might be nooks and crannies in places like this, that you're likely to be able to discover. I'm not going to go in there, but if players want to explore, they can. And now I'm just going to fling myself off a bridge.
Well, this is one change that was not in Heartland. I did add that path next to the bridge, just because we're getting a lot of feedback that it felt kind of lousy having one bridge being rebuilt, and if you go turn around the other way, there's that path.
Are you talking about this path up here, or something that I left behind?
No, the one that goes up the hill toward the broken bridge.
Oh, got it.
It's from the river, but we're getting a lot of feedback that since one bridge was rebuilt, players just kind of expected the bridge to be rebuilt on the other side, and you get there, it's still broken from Heartland. So,
and you can also use rivers as highways, of course, like you always can in our game. It's great.
I'm still finding new and fun stuff that Doug and his crew created for this, and I'll sit at home laughing maniacally to myself when I find something like that. You and your crew have hit it out of the park, Doug. It's the most entertaining map I think we've ever done.
Yeah, I remember commenting fairly early on that it was sort of disappointing to come down this road and end in a dead end. And my best idea was, well, could we put a dead end sign farther up the road so people don't come down here? And Doug's like, well, why don't I just do this and this and this and make it more interesting? Actually create some sort of secret, almost like secret paths that connect parts of the map. I love finding those little places. Like the first time on Drucker that I realized I could drive down the hill sort of behind the hospital and connect two parts of the map. Oh, this is great. I love those things.
All right, so
we also added some escapes from the river that weren't there in Heartland just because we had to wall it off there. But so once you're in there, you're not stuck and walled in like you were there. There's 3 or 4 places to get out to make it a lot easier.
And there's just so many interesting little details, like that puddle I just drove through. I feel like there's just so much more texture to the map now than we were ever even capable of doing in State of Decay 1, on 2 generations of hardware ago. It's just amazing to see what your team's been able to come up with. And actually, we're going to make sure that we talk with other members of Doug's team on our launch day stream on Wednesday. We're going to have some folks from Valkyrie come in. We're going to have Megan, who did a lot of the lighting, especially around the bases. We're going to talk to more folks because we really want to give a lot of these artists who worked on this map a chance to talk about the impact that they were able to make. So traditionally, this is when we would normally end the stream. Wonder says that the mods are actually our mods in the chat do actually have a hard out at 4 o'clock, and so
as do I.
As does Brant. Okay, so it looks like we're not going to necessarily be able to do the same Q&A that we normally would be able to do. So let's wrap this up. But I think after we wrap up the stream officially, I might stick around just on my own for a little bit, just to try to go through some of the questions and see which ones that I can answer on my own, so that we don't want people who are in the chat to feel like they haven't gotten a chance to sort of to go back and forth with us a little bit. But so really quick before we do that, let's make sure that we get a chance to say goodbye to our esteemed panel of guests here. Andy Collins, thank you so much for all of the work that you did. I mean, you guys don't understand the amount of coordination and work that went into building this. It just, it's not just another new map. There is so much more to it. As you explore it, you're going to learn how much story content there is, how many, secrets and rewards and things. And Andy had to coordinate a lot of that stuff. So thank you so much for all the work you put into this, Andy.
I was fortunate to have an amazing team to work with.
Speaking of that amazing team, Doug Juno, thank you so much for coming here and talking through, your thought process and what your team was able to accomplish with the art of this map. It's really a beautiful piece of work. Like Brant was saying, it's one of the best things we've ever done with this team. So thank you for coming here and thanks for all the work that you did.
Yeah, you're welcome. And yeah, and hopefully everybody shows up on Wednesday and they'll get to hear more about the other actual new art assets and everything that went in there that we didn't even get to talk about today. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of stuff. So.
And of course, Brant, our longest-standing member of the art team, who put a ton of work not only into this version of the map, but also all the previous versions of the map. Thank you so much for coming here and giving us a tour of your thoughts on it.
Well, it's been an honor and a privilege to see the game that Doug and I envisioned in our head in 2006 still alive. This long, and especially Trumbull Valley. It's like coming home. Homecoming was the perfect name for that because for me, it feels like home for the franchise. But great work, team. I'm not going to be here for launch day, but so proud of the team. Everyone worked so hard and so passionately to get this to be the best experience we've ever done. I think it is, and just so proud of everybody. So, and of course, we love you guys. We couldn't do it without the support of our fantastic fans. Thanks for checking us out, and be sure to tune in Wednesday to watch Geoffrey and a bunch of people talk about their experiences on this project. So thank you, everybody.
So to quickly sum up all the stuff that we went over today, what's new in Trumbull Valley includes Mount Tanner and Fairfield, two huge areas that were originally not in the Heartland version of Trumbull Valley that have now come back for the first time since the original State of Decay. We've also added 6 new bases, which we're going to get into a lot more detail about on our next official Monday stream. We've also advanced the story quite a bit, which we hinted about, but we tried to avoid going too deep into that because we want you to be able to discover that stuff by yourself. And also discoveries, this new feature that lets your character actually react to what they're seeing in the world and lets us sort of lean a lot harder into a lot of those sort of Easter eggs and environmental storytelling moments that we've always done that now we can do a little bit better. So yeah, so come back on September 1st, which is just 2 days from now, for a special launch day celebration. We're going to be talking to a ton of different people from the team. We'll be talking to folks who worked on the map. We'll be talking to the technical designer who implemented several of the really long requested feature changes. We're going to be talking to a bunch of people from QA. We'll be talking to the marketing team about all the effort that went into, to telling people about this game and giving them a lot of different angles, into what this update had to offer. So please show up for that. I'm going to wrap up this sort of the final video of our stream, but I'm actually going to stick around a little bit longer to try to get to some of those questions that were asked. So for right now, we'll see you all later, and hope you enjoy Trumbull Valley. It's almost out. And now, a few more seconds of this screen. Look at that zombie. He's so cute. He's just looking at us.